Welcome to the Bladtcast, or in some cases, welcome back to the Bladtcast. Joining me now is musician David Ellefson, best known for being part of Megadeth. Welcome to the show, David.
Hey, how are you doing? What's going on?
Now, there's so much I want to talk to you about. There's this live event tomorrow that's really interesting, and there was just something that I heard you on with Eddie Trunk maybe about a week and a half ago, and you just mentioned something in passing that you and your wife spend time somewhere that I used to go all the time as a kid, where I always wished was like, one day I want to have a house. So my great-grandfather had built a house in Waretown, New Jersey, which is right next to Barnegat. And I was always like, yeah, this is perfect. This is the beach, but it's like not right there. So how exactly do you end up, I know that's not where you are right now, but how do you end up with that as somebody, it seems like people know Long Beach Island, but the mainland right across from it isn't necessarily, somewhere that everybody knows about.
Well, you can certainly use our house right now because we're not there. And it doesn't look like we're going to be there for a while.
Might be a long time, yeah.
And it's locked down, and it's my wife's, it's her haven. It's her getaway in New Jersey. No, we bought the place a couple years ago in the summer, I think 2018. And it is funny. It's a little town that she grew up in, Barnegat, New Jersey.
Okay.
I think she was born up in Wayne, and then they moved down to Ocean County. And Waretown, right where it is. It's just a couple blocks north of Barnegat. So, we go back there. We summer down the shore, if you will. My wife's East Coast girl. I grew up in Minnesota, so I'm not a beach guy. So, for me, the beach is optional. For her, it's absolutely mandatory. In fact, when we moved here to Scottsdale in 1993, we got here, and Scottsdale's beautiful. I mean, looking out the window, there's literally not a cloud in the sky. It's just beautiful. But she goes, "Oh my God, please don't let me die in the desert," And that was 26 years ago. So I heard that, and I remembered it, and I was kind of like, happy wife, happy life, right? So I'm like, okay, at some point, we'll make some kind of a move.
It was sort of great because the fact that my grandparents owned this house. We didn't have a ton of money growing up. My dad would always get 2 weeks of vacation. We couldn't go away, but we had this house that we would go to, and it's like, we go out to eat like once out of the 2 weeks, and it's like we go shopping at the A&P, and it was like it's kind of like normal, but like the beach is right there. So I have so many happy memories of that place. Literally every summer that when you mentioned it, I'm like, oh, man, that was the dream for me to have the house down there at the shore.
Down the shore. No, exactly. I get it. And again, not being from the East Coast, I had to learn all this, down the shore and all this stuff, but it's interesting. Obviously, we're paying attention to it because we have a lot of friends, family, of course, my wife's family is there. And Ocean County I think they have more cases of coronavirus than the entire state of Arizona. And I feel very blessed that we're here. We just came home from Europe. We were doing a Megadeth tour through January and February. We got home from Europe. We started hearing about it kind of bubbling up about a week or two kind of behind everywhere we were. We started in Scandinavia and went down across France, Germany, the UK. We'd actually played in Milan, Italy. And about a week or so after we were out of there, we started hearing the reports, about kind of, I think, up in the north there of Italy, where it was starting to, these cases were breaking out. So fortunately, we got home and everybody in our camp is okay. But I saw my friend Mike Portnoy had posted that his Sons of Apollo tour was being shut down because venues were closing and things were locking down. And it seemed drastic, at first, because you're going, wow, there doesn't seem like there's that big of a problem. But, they've done much better with it, obviously, than we have, And look, I travel all the time by airplane, of course. And if you want to get sick anyway, even if you're at your healthiest when it's not flu season, just get on an airplane, So, to me, shutting down air travel, I mean, a germ can go around the world, theoretically in 24 to 48 hours with the airplane travel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm glad we're home. I'm glad we're all safe. And it's just an unprecedented time.
Yeah, there's a few things I wanted to address in there. The first is that what you're saying about an airplane is absolutely true. My wife, I think, flew, this was a couple of years ago. She was like 7 months pregnant, and her doctor was like, yes, if you know, it was for work, it's like, if you need to fly, sure, you can't touch anything. And they just sort of went through it. And it's sort of like how we're living now, you know, the Purell after anything, you know, somebody coughs near you, you kind of put the hood up, and, you know, it's just not something that you're mindful of until you just start to look around. It's like, yeah, they clean these planes, but it's like the next group of passengers gets on like less than an hour. So how much do they actually clean them, you know?
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah. Well, I'm getting all these messages from the airlines now. They're saying how they are cleaning it and how they're taking special care of their food. It's like, well, what were you doing with it before? You know? And so I like the social distancing. It's like, you know what? I'd be fine not sitting closer than 5 or 6 feet from someone on an airplane. I'd be good if we kept that. You know what I mean? Maybe we stretch those seats out a little farther. You know,
the idea that, you know, look, one day when movie theaters reopen, that it's only going to be half capacity, and you
perfect.
know,
I love it.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's definitely do that.
You know, and the bummer, sadly, of course, you know, half of our business is the concert business. You know, we're in the record industry, but we're also in the live entertainment sector. And, you know, boy, it's, you know, that's really suffering, because you think about the whole goal of the concert business is put as many people in as big of a room as you possibly can. And, you know, now the mandate is no more of that, you know, like, get everybody out of here. So it's, you know, it's really going to be an interesting year to see how this plays out. And, you know, I've got some friends, of course, overseas in China, you know, over in Asia, Singapore and whatnot. And, you know, you know, I'll talk to him once a week, and I'm just like, so what's the skinny? What's happening over there? Because obviously they're 3-4 months ahead of what we have here. And, you know, you kind of keep an eye on it, and it's, you know, who knows? I mean, look, I know one thing, it seems like as long as we do this social distancing and keep away physically from each other, it seems to be the only real line of defense that we have. And it seems to help. You know, like I say, I'm glad we live in Arizona. I think, you know, the sun and the UV rays and all this kind of stuff. Fortunately, we're heading into spring and summer, you know, around the world here. And hopefully that'll help, you know. I mean, I'm no doctor, you know, I'm just going by what everybody else is saying. But, you know, strange times indeed, Lance. And, you know, what's interesting is I think what we're doing here, and again, you as a journalist and me, and we would kind of operate like this a lot anyway. But, I mean, let's face it, I mean, I didn't even know of Zoom until a month ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I was talking about that. It's like, I use the word Zoom so many times in a day now. Like,
I know.
About an hour after I get done talking to you, my wife's Chinese American. So her and her huge extended family, we're all going to Zoom together for dinner. So we're using Zoom as a verb, as a noun, you know, oh, I have a Zoom downstairs. Oh, we have to go Zoom. And I mean, I knew about Skype. I knew about FaceTime. I literally a month ago had never heard of Zoom.
Right.
And now
we used to always say, hey, we'll phone it in or we'll Skype it in. Now we're going to Zoom it in, you know? So, hey, you know, we're working on that with records, you know. I mean, obviously we can't, you know, the performance thing doesn't really work. We're actually working on a few things the last couple of weeks with that. And it's difficult, you know, because there is latency and stuff like that. But, you know, I'll tell you what, it's a creative time right now. And I think, you know, I've been working on, you know, a new Ellefson solo album that I was just, you know, kind of just doing casually in my spare time. We had a full Megadeth year lined up. And of course, you know, we're taking that week by week now too. We were going to be recording at the end of March, and we've had to push that down the road now until it's safe for us to be traveling. And, you know, so again, so much for making plans, you know what I mean? And so a lot of things are changing, you know?
Yeah, and obviously, in terms of people that are familiar with the band, obviously, you know, last year was a big setback for Dave Mustaine, the singer, because he had, you know, he was diagnosed with cancer. And, you know, you were saying you guys toured earlier in the year, so that gives the impression that, you know, he's doing a lot better. You know, he seems to be well. But obviously, the one thing they say at this time is anybody who might be immunocompromised. So I think, so recently having to, you know, deal with cancer treatments, I think it's like, oh yeah, he's not going anywhere for a while, I would imagine.
Yeah, and in our case, you know, our operation now is based in Nashville, so we'd all be going there. But, you know, Dirk, he lives in Los Angeles, which of course is very much a lockdown state, California. Kiko is over in Helsinki, Finland now, and you know, I don't even think he could get here. You know, so not, it's you know, it's interesting. I mean, we had a festival, the Hell in Heaven Fest March, middle of March, that we're going to go do. And literally, this was all locking down. The government's, presidents canceling, like saying, look, no more flights from Europe. And we had a festival, and Kiko was in Finland, and we're just going, oh my gosh, like this could be disastrous. I mean, you could get stranded any number of places around the world and not even be able to get home, and all kinds of different stuff going on. So yeah, look, it's a different time that we live in, and look, as much as we can record and do some things, in our home studios and that, I now more than ever, I'm probably thirsting for just live fellowship with people. To me, music is always people in a room. There's just an energy. There's just a connectivity that happens when people are in a room making music, obviously performing it for people. While I'm appreciative for any form of collaboration and creativity at this moment, that is a thing that I just have always felt, and it's just how I grew up, getting in the room with guys and making music together. So, and I think you can hear it oftentimes in the final product as well. It's nice when, there's records, we put them on, and you can just visualize the band in front of you playing. There's a real connectivity about that. And, I think that's always the goal, is to make records that sound like you're a real group in a room together.
Yeah, and I think that, look, I think a lot of times that's not how albums these days are made. But yeah, if you can give the impression that, even if, because sometimes you'll hear somebody explain, it's like, well, I recorded this part and I emailed it to him and then he laid this down. And then last thing, all of a sudden this person wanted to be a guest on it. So then he, and just the idea that all these files are getting emailed around, you're like, no, that's not like, you kind of remember sort of like there were videos for like Aerosmith recording Pump or Metallica recording the Black Album, where they're all in the band. And it's just sort of like, I always thought like, well, yeah, that's how every album is. They're always there. And of course, everybody's best friends because they spend all that time together, So as you get older, you start to realize like, oh yeah, none of that's true.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I actually had a flight scheduled. I was going to go to London on Monday to go over to Wembley, and I was going to meet our guitar player, Andy Martingelli, who lives down in Italy, and he and our drummer Paolo, we were going to go up and meet up in the Wembley area and be working on this next Ellefson record, literally next week, Wow. And I just happened to think last week, I thought, I should probably cancel that flight. And I went and I looked at it, and the flight home from London had already been canceled, and by the airline, it was done, So, but I was just thinking about that, just going, man, so much for all the plans that we made. So look, we go through it. We've certainly been very busy, obviously, with our, with everything with the Youth Foundation and this event we're doing tomorrow. I mean, I gotta say, I have not been for a loss of just things to do. I mean, my God, it's just been unbelievably busy, which is great. And it just reminds me that every time you have your hand in sort of the proverbial hand of helping other people, I like to say, when you make it a we rather than a me, it changes the whole scope of everything. And suddenly there's this connectivity of all of us all over. And, this big webcast we're going to be doing tomorrow, we've been spending this week getting the technology together and sound checking it and kind of line checking it and getting together and to get it all ready to execute tomorrow. And
let's talk about how the timing for this is. You're starting to see a little bit more of this. You're seeing, it's usually like one musician with an acoustic guitar doing stuff, but you're seeing a lot of these live streaming events. Some of them are like really big and sponsored by major companies. Others are like, oh yeah, I'll be on my Facebook page tonight, and that kind of crosses into, you were saying earlier that what a creative time this is. You're getting a lot of like content from comedians who can't go up on the stage anywhere, and all of a sudden they're using their YouTube channel. I have 2 small kids, and there's like children's authors that'll do like readings like literally every day. So there's so much stuff out there. So this is a great time for something like your event, which I love the name of, Oh Say Can You Stream, and that's tomorrow, April 11th. It starts at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. And it's a fundraiser for, as you mentioned, the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation, and wanted to kind of talk about the organization and sort of what the event is for, and then we'll talk about the event itself.
Sure. Well, we formed the foundation in 2018 came around, the mayor of my little hometown I grew up in, Jackson, Minnesota, he proclaimed October 9th as official David Ellefson Day, which was very kind,
Nice.
very, very heartwarming.
Yeah.
It was really, really wonderful, But it was around that event that I wanted to start. That's where I wanted to start this foundation, because I thought, if we can use this day as a platform to something that gives back to the community, and I've been fortunate enough to grow up in a global community, being a traveling artist and performer over the years. The main thing with the foundation was to continue to bolster music programs in and out of the public schools, some private things as well, because I'm a product of the public school system, music programs. When I started playing tenor saxophone in 5th grade and played in orchestra band and marching band and played bass and jazz band and all that stuff. I mean, that really helped me, that's why we're having this conversation, was from those formative years,
Yeah,
so,
sure.
So move forward here till, to March 2020. And my partner, Tom Hazard, called me up and he just said, he goes, man, it's like, this thing is getting real now and things are locking down, schools are closing. And I think that may have been the day they did sort of I don't know if it was a national shutdown of schools, but it was a big day. And he said, he goes, man, we should really get on the horn and start giving some lessons, Skype or whatever, just do it, And so I started calling my friends, Jimmy DeGrasso and Dirk and Kiko from Megadeth, Nita Strauss, Bumblefoot. I just started hitting everybody. Clint Lowry from Seven Dust. I just said, man, would you guys be willing to just, donate an hour or two of your life to just give some free lessons to these kids? Because we wanted these lessons to be free, and that is the initiative. Not only in this time, but what's looking like is probably going to be fairly sustainable moving forward now for a while, is to continue to offer music lessons as well as even mentorship. Like Chris Cale from Five Finger Death Punch. We became good buddies these last couple of months, and he's a big, very charismatic personality, and he just said, man, he goes, like, I'd be happy to get on a Zoom, Skype, whatever, and just kind of hang with some kids and just give them some hope and keep them excited about music and whatever they're into. And so it's even that. It isn't just necessarily we're sitting there studying a G chord. It can be even just kind of some bigger picture. Just continuing to give hope to people, and as much as as kids, let's face it. I grew up in Minnesota. Snow days were like a godsend. Oh my God, it's snowing. No school. And that's fine for like a couple weeks. And then you realize, like, wow, everything's changing. And how I go to school's changing, and everything is a different world. So our hope with our Schools Out initiative is that we are keeping kids engaged, keeping them into the creative process, keeping them disciplined with their practicing, and also just giving them hope.
Yeah. And look, even before this, you heard so much about how much the issue of music and just creative arts in school has been kind of the first thing to be cut already, so there was probably already a shortage of this. And then now when everything comes back, it's just like, well, yeah, that's probably something that maybe we don't have room for. So I think it's when you have this sort of time on your hands, and I mean us collectively, not either of us personally, just like, yeah, there's so many different things to focus on. You can focus on big picture stuff, people donating to something like the Red Cross or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, well, these kids that are home, all day. And yeah, like what you were talking about, where I grew up in somewhat rural New York State, a snow day was great. You had 2 days in a row. It was like, oh my God, this is great. But then eventually it's like, I got to go out and shovel snow all day. I don't want to do this. Can we go back to school?
Right.
And it's sad too, because my son's only 4, but every once in a while, he's just the other day, he was like, hey, when's the big Easter egg hunt going to be? There would be a big one in our town every year. And we're like,
right.
Well, we're just going to do it at home. And just a lot of the things that it's like the expectation. So I can only imagine for older kids who are still grade school kids, just the idea of having something like this, it's not necessarily something that parents would have thought about. It's certainly wasn't on the forefront of my mind, but then I heard you talking about it with, like I said, I heard you on with Eddie Trunk, and it's like, oh, this is such a great thing to be doing right now because it's important, but most of us probably didn't think about it ahead of time.
Well, and here's the other thing, Christian, is that, it isn't, look, obviously the students, of course, and this is why we want the lessons to be free, because we don't want them to pay for it. But, a lot of my friends who are all going to be on our our webathon tomorrow, which is a fundraiser, the Say Can You Stream event, which is a fundraiser because a lot of our friends are out of work with the touring business. Tours are either canceled or postponed. I just read a report today that touring could likely be kicked all the way into 2021. But before, because it doesn't matter that you can go out and put a show on sale. It's the reality is anybody going to come? Because everybody's kind of chilled out and kind of freaked out about being together in big groups of people. So a lot of my friends who were certainly kind enough to step in and help give of their time. Some of these people do give lessons anyway. They teach when they're off the road. That's a big part of their income, and it's all shifted. So what we found is that the early responses we got, right away, we got like within the first day or two, we got like something like 200 responses from kids all around the world saying, sign me up, I'll do the free lessons. And then it grew to 500, and now we're up to almost 1,000. It's growing exponentially. And so by doing the fundraiser tomorrow, fortunately, our operating costs of our foundation are very low, so we're not an organization where all this money gets gobbled up into paying people a bunch of salaries and crap of just running a foundation. Maybe that might happen later, but for now it's not, because fortunately the building is this right here, so everybody's sitting at home.
Right, exactly.
So we can keep our sort of operational expenses pretty almost zero, which is nice. But so the goal is to have this, we want to give some to COVID-19 relief funds, but also to be able to pay our instructors, and have them be on call for us so that we can continue to do this. Because again, I'm just one dude with a bass. I can only give so many lessons, and we've got a huge queue, and and also not just, bass and guitar, but drummers, singers, keyboard instrument players, percussionists, horn players. We're really expanding it so that we kind of get the full orchestra here, so that way we've got enough people that can really help supplement, if not even replace, a school band program on a number of levels to just really, we can be the leader of the band, so to speak.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the people who are involved in the Say Can You Stream event, which, as we're discussing, is tomorrow, April 11th, starting at, It's 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 Pacific.
Right.
And right at the top of the list was somebody that caught my eye. Literally my all-time favorite. The first concert I ever went to in 1990 was Alice Cooper. And I know that he does a lot for music charities, in the Phoenix area, because I know he lives there. So talk about, I'm just going to assume you guys have probably known each other a long time. Talk about, obviously there's the Alice that people know on stage, but the offstage Alice seems to be just a very giving and also just a great, funny guy too.
Well, here again, you and I probably wouldn't be having this conversation if it weren't for Alice Cooper. In 1987, he was brave and bold enough to take Megadeth on tour as his opening act on his Constrictor tour. And that was right as we got signed to Capitol Records with our Peace Sells But Who's Buying album. And he took us out on a huge arena tour. He was rebuilding his own career after he had gone through some hardships of his own lifestyle, which he had a nice heart-to-heart sort of father-son talk to us about regarding drugs and alcohol. And later I would get sober as well. And, so Alice has been, not only a friend, but a father figure, a mentor to us. And it's interesting, just yesterday on the Megadeth socials, we posted out a picture of a Monsters of Rock festival. And the particular one was in Sao Paulo, and it was Ozzy Osbourne was the headliner with Alice Cooper, Megadeth, Faith No More, a bunch of other people. Well, from that show, Alice Cooper and Megadeth, we went on a full complete tour around South America. And Alice and I were sitting up, in the front of the plane, we became friends on that tour, like buddies, and he was telling me about his new young son, Dash, who now has been signed to my record label. And we were able to help Dash out last year push out his own band and his record. And Alice was telling me about this Christian teen center that he wanted to open up. And we were having discussions about faith and family and all kinds of different stuff on those flights back in 1995. And so here we are all these years later, And I watched him. He had these fundraisers. He had his golf tournaments in April. He would, every December, he would do he does a big fundraiser with his Christmas pudding concerts, and gets everybody from the industry comes out and donates their time for Alice so he can raise money. And they opened their teen center, and it's like 20 minutes from my house here. So they've had really good success with it, with the Solid Rock Foundation. He and his wife, Cheryl, have really done well. And in a lot of ways are kind of a model even for what we're doing with our foundation. And so to have them on tomorrow, we really want to help speak to them because Alice had to come home off tour because of the coronavirus issue. And so he came home to get ahead of it and be safe, and his organization is fine. But he as well has now is facing some some of their fundraisers, their golf tournament in April, things that were really important to them. So hopefully we can help raise some awareness for him and maybe even drive some fundraising efforts over to him. And our partnership with the Grammy Music Education Coalition for our foundation has just been incredible. I mean, the Grammys, Megadeth, we've been nominated for 12 of them, and we finally won one. The one sitting back here behind me on my shelf that's why it means so much to me, because it's not like we just wrote a song and won a Grammy. I mean, that's 36 years or whatever of a lot of work that went into that, and that's just 36 years of Megadeth plus everything I did before that. So the Grammys have been very gracious and generous to us with partnering with us and letting us be part of their coalition and helping spread the word and get the word out about this event as well as the other events that we've been a part of with them.
Yeah, no. And I think that it's great. I mean, obviously, I think for music fans, the Grammys has sort of become this TV show where you wish that there was a little bit more representation of rock involved. But it's great to hear that, sort of behind the scenes, there's some support. And yeah, it's funny because I wasn't even noticing it. I'm like, oh yeah, there is his Grammy right there. It's right behind him.
Well, what I've learned with the Grammys, and again, it's funny, once you win, you really get pulled into the middle of it. And again, people participate or they don't, depending on that. But, me and Tom, my partner, we really folded ourselves into their graces, and there's several pillars of their business. One is obviously the TV show. The other is the Grammy Museum downtown LA. And another one is Music Cares. And I remember when I was going through rehab and getting clean back in, I finally got sober in March of 1990, but when I was going through treatment back in 1988, 88 and 89, I remember the Music Cares was just starting, and these people in the music business, and I lived in LA at the time, so I was always around all these people who were part of that, the kind of the formation of Music Cares, and that it was this, part of the Grammys, the Recording Academy. And so I'm watching it grow to what it is now. And now having this Grammy Music Education Coalition that they've started has really just been it's a good time, and sometimes you look back and go, man, why didn't we win that Grammy back when, and now in hindsight, it makes sense. The Grammy being won, what was it, 2017, I guess, when we won it. At that moment in time, I was a little older, maybe a little wiser, but certainly had other things on my plate that are much more, I hate to use the word in concert, but certainly, in concert with what would work with some of these other organizations where we can partner together and do some effective change and really be there to help people. So in hindsight, that little boy back there probably showed up at just the right time it was meant to be in my life.
Yeah. And look, obviously we'll talk more about the live event, but you sort of touched on it, sort of the moment where you get clean. And I know in your book, you were very open about just sort of the level of addiction that you were dealing with. And, my understanding is that at least at this point in your life, faith is a big part of your life. And that sort of brings it back to Alice, because, the guy who literally gets his head cut off on stage every night is not somebody that you're going to think of as being the devout Christian, even though if like his father was a preacher. So it's like literally his whole life. Yeah. And, and again, it's like, Megadeth is not one of those bands, with all the pentagrams and the 666 on the album, but at the same time, it's a genre where you can kind of be like, oh, I didn't know that there might necessarily be room for faith in heavy metal and hard rock. But as you start, maybe it's also when people start to get older and have families and things, you see that there's actually, whatever the faith is, there is actually plenty of room in there to sort of be the, Alice is the most drastic example of on stage versus off stage, but really it how it all actually can work together.
Well, Alice is I've always said Alice is very aware of who he is. He figuratively can wipe the makeup off when he walks off stage and be a gentleman, and be a father and a family man and a parent. And I paid attention to that in my own life. I went, okay, I can be on stage and melt faces and Megadeth and thrash and, do all that we do. But when you walk off stage, that character stays on the stage, and as you walk off the stage, you transition. It's kind of like the Superman, Clark Kent goes into the, he goes into the phone booth, and then, you come out in your cape and you go take the stage and, rule the world. But, when you come off the stage, you got to take the cape off, and you can't be Superman, 24/7. And I think, again, Alice has certainly been a wonderful model example of that. And it's been great. And, look, I grew up, again, a farm, small town kid and everything. And, that's what we did. I mean, look, we worked at the farm 6 days a week. We went to church on Sunday and rested, and then Monday was back to work again, so I was raised like that. So, my parents, I'm hopefully a product of good parenting. If there was any shortcomings in my life, they were on me, not my parents,
Sure. So let's talk about, there's definitely some names in here that stand out, because Charlie Benanti from Anthrax, and then you also see Daryl McDaniels from DMC, Frank Hannon from Tesla. There's all these names that jump out. Carmine Appice. You just see all these names on there. So, we could literally run off all the names, but there are a couple that really jump out at me because they don't necessarily fit. Like, actor Larry Thomas, who's the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. And I'm like, well, that caught my eye. Yeah. And so that's one. I'm sort of like, well, how do you get to know the No Soup for You soup Nazi from Seinfeld?
Well, it's funny in that, Danny Cooksey, Larry Thomas, Adam Green, they're kind of a little segment of our actors,
right.
which is great. I met Larry at the Houston Comic-Con in 2014, I believe. I had done the Comic-Con down there, and I went over to say hello to him, and like a lot of people, when you do these Comic-Cons, especially the actors, they've got out their 8x10s, their headshots, and you realize, holy cow, this guy's been in a lot of movies and TV shows and various things, and all it takes is one, to make you a household name, like he became. And it was funny, at the booth, he signs soup ladles, right? That's his autograph. Or I would sign, albums or
sure.
picks or, whatever, or my book or something. He signed soup ladles. So I have a soup ladle over here, and that he signed for my family. So, and I know for a period he was living here in Arizona. I'd actually done another record store event a couple years ago, and he was there, and we got the chance. So we've kind of been around each other a lot, and I just love the guy. He's such a sweet dude.
Well, the Comic-Con circuit probably answers my question of another name is certainly not a household name, but someone named Stephen Costatino, who their credit is played a Gamorrean guard in Return of the Jedi, which they're the big, like, sort of pig face guys that work at Jabba the Hutt's palace.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that that's a Comic-Con thing, but it's like you go down the list and I'm like, well, that's something that my audience is going to be excited about. Somebody who got to be in a Star Wars movie,
Right. Well, and, Tom knows a lot of these people too. And that's why, like, I reached out to, Jim Florentine and Craig Gass and Don Jameson and Ricky Rackman, because they're kind of my buddies or my heavy metal rock and roll hosts and comedian guys. And Tom reached over to some actor friends of his, and that's the beauty of collaboration, and I'm, I think that's a big thing of what Tom and I do is, we bring people together, we try to lift people up. It's one of the things we did, we do with our record label, with the EMP Label Group and Combat Records, is, we help put records out for friends that in a very ever-changing record business, you know, a lot of great artists, but it's like, okay, where do we go with this record? You know, what do we do with this? Who's the best promotion? What's the best avenue? And we found that we became a really great resource for that. So that's, you know, that's me and Tom's thing, man, is just bringing people together. I think in a lot of ways, this whole, you know, Say Can You Stream, in a lot of ways is kind of the mantelpiece of everything that Tom and I try to do. And bringing everyone together and lifting everybody up, and look, finding some fellowship, you know, on a Saturday afternoon, I mean, I got the list here, I don't know, 50, 60 people together, just hang out and have a barbecue, you know, a virtual barbecue at each other's houses, you know.
Well, and that was something you referenced earlier, that, you know, for this day and age, being able to do an event like this, it all has to be basically like the way we're talking right now, Zoom or Skype or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, the overhead is non-existent for a charity in the way it was. Like if you know, had to rent out a venue, and if you were going to film it and tell that, all of that would be so expensive. But now people are fine to watch the Tonight Show, where, like, you know, Jimmy Fallon like puts an iPad in front of them and films it. All of a sudden, you know, people are just excited to have something new coming into their houses, which, you know, if you think about it, like if something like this happened 10, 20 or more years ago, we wouldn't have this kind of connectivity at all, you know?
Well, because let's face it, half of us would be out at an event somewhere. You know, we'd be out watching a new movie. We'd be over at some concert down the street. We'd be out having dinner with our friends, you know? So yeah, you're right. I mean, in a weird way, you know, it's kind of like the good Lord's just saying, hey, time out. Go sit in the corner. You know, you're all in a timeout right now. Go, you know, go home. No, you know, and appreciate the toys I gave you, you know, instead of always wanting more, because I think that's a lot of and look, we realize how much we all have, how much we really don't need, and just sort of the abundance that we have. At least I speak for our country, you know, and at the same time, there's a lot of people who don't have, and I think it's a real awareness sometimes to just stop and go, holy cow, man. So many of us are so blessed with so much, and we fail to look around and see the people that are right, sometimes down our street, right in our backyard, people who really are in need, you know. And I go to a church here in town once in a while, and they were talking about that, you know, it's great to do these missions overseas, and the Lutherans, like I grew up with, they were real big on that, always kind of doing these mission trips overseas. And those are important too. But, you know, there's a lot of need right in our own backyard, you know, and look, we can't, in my case, I can't be everything to everybody and be everywhere. But the one thing I can do is I'm a musician, and I'm a communicator, and I'm a collaborator, and I'm a guy who likes to bring people together and do things, you know. So look, in my little corner of the earth, this is something that I can do, and me and Tom together as a partnership we can do, and just at least bring some people together, bring awareness. Hopefully out of what we do tomorrow, there will be even greater collaborations, and some things that probably we're not even aware of today will hopefully spin out that'll be really, you know, help the kingdom and just, you know, be beneficial for everybody.
Now, part of the event, I know that there'll be some, you know, obviously you're going to have a lot of people who pop in just to talk and, you know, do their part in that way. But there's going to be some actual performances. Now, are you going to perform and like do like a split screen with the other guys in your solo band? How exactly is it going to work?
We have been trying it. So we've been through several different technology platforms to try this, and we've finally settled on one now. And we've been trying to do it, and the reality of it is there's a latency that happens that, I mean, you know, when you're playing songs together, you really have to be on time, you know, and we're actually working on it right now as we speak. We're on a call because we want our Italian friends, you know, my solo band that we make these records together, my Ellefson records, and the international touring, you know, those guys all live over in Italy, and our mixer is up in London, and of course they're all quarantined as well. So, but to bring them in, because one of the songs that we wrote when we were on tour together back in November is a song called Simple Truth that we just put out this week. And in honor of our band and our friends in Italy, we are donating all the proceeds from that song to the Italian Red Cross COVID-19 Relief Fund. And we just put it up on Bandcamp, the Ellefson Bandcamp page today. And as well as next week, it'll be up on all the digital platforms. So just know anybody who purchases that money is going straight to Italy to help them out. But with that said, we wanted to play the song. So we we'll know tomorrow at 1 p.m. how it all turns out. If we have to do the Jimmy Fallon thing and pre-record and have it there, which again, our thing is most of we just want to honor bringing everybody together, and even if we have to, do something like that with a pre-record and a split screen thing, like what Jimmy Fallon does. I watch Fallon as well, and it's cool to see what they do. But there are some other people like Frank Hannon from Tesla. He's going to perform because, again, one guy in a room and an acoustic guitar singing, that's easy. That works perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I see a lot of the names on there. Like, I don't know if he's going to perform in that way, but I interviewed Mark Slaughter once. I saw his name on there, and while we were waiting the whole time, he just kept playing guitar the whole time, like that. Yeah. So I feel like even if you said, that's all right, Mark, we don't need you to perform, I feel like he'd probably play anyway.
Yeah. Well, I told everybody, Nita Strauss, Alex Skolnick, I said, look, show up with a guitar. When you turn your camera on, have a guitar, because who knows? Like, why not? And who knows what happens? I mean, again, there could be all kinds of fun collaborations and things going on, and especially when you get in with these comedian guys. I mean, Jameson and Florentine and these guys. I mean, who knows what sort of nonsense they may come up with.
No, it's great. Yeah, because it's 2/3 of that metal show. Those guys are both great. Exactly. So it's great to have them. And yeah, you mentioned Ricky Rackman earlier, and I guess the easiest sort of go-to to find everything for it is the Ellefson Youth Music Foundation website. You're on Twitter at Ellefson David, which I found because when I looked up David Ellefson, there's just some regular guy named
So
David
Ellefson.
That,
right? So I went on, it's funny, my Facebook, I was able to get back because they will help that. Actually, some people through EMI, our record label, they were able to help me get my Facebook back. Because, if there's a period of time when everybody just grabbed these names and squat on them.
Yeah, sure.
And the Twitter guy, David Ellefson, is like some pocket protector dude sitting there. And I think he's got like he's had the thing for 10 years and he's posted twice. So I'm like, all right. But with Twitter, you can't get your name back. It's weird. And one night I was actually watching the evening news, and there was one of our local sports celebrities here in Phoenix played for the Suns or the Cardinals or something, and I noticed he flipped his name backwards. Like Barkley Charles or something like that. So I was like, all right, I'll do that. I'll be Ellefson David. Then at least it'll be officially mine.
Yeah, exactly. So that that's where they can find everything. And if people are watching this sort of after the fact, I did notice on the website there's a button to donate, where if for whatever reason they miss all of this excitement, but they're still interested in the cause, they can just go to that. And I'm sorry, is it EllefsonYouthMusicFoundation.com or .org? I don't know.
Either one will drive you there. .org is really what it is, but we have a .com, and that'll point to the .org as well. So.
Well, and the fact that I couldn't keep it straight, that's exactly why you have to go get both, because everybody's used to .com. Exactly. Sometimes people have something, you're like, well, what is .tv? And all that.
And just said everybody knows too. Yeah, you can go. That is the official landing page, but you can also go. It'll be on my Facebook.com/David Ellefson, YouTube.com/David Ellefson, and also on the Grammys are opening up. I believe their Facebook page and also the Twitch account. I think it's the Grammy Music ED. I think is what it is.
Right. Yeah. Well, look, I appreciate you being so generous with your time. Just sort of one sort of closing thing, sort of what we were talking about in the beginning. I know just from sort of looking at what the plans were. You talked about how Megadeth had these plans. Like in June, you were going to be doing a big arena tour with Lamb of God. And it's like, yeah, right now we're talking, it's the middle of April. It's like, oh, maybe. But it's so hard to predict. Like and the whole thing really snuck up on us so much. I mean, you were talking about, you were in Europe touring probably like the last couple weeks where you could actually still do shows. Right. You've heard of other people who unfortunately, caught it over there in a few different bands. I think, I don't want to guess. I feel like one of the guys in Testament, maybe you heard about some of the guys who caught it, and it's like, yeah, it's almost like you went home like that week. If you'd been around 2 weeks longer, who knows? And the idea of sort of getting back to it is it's so unpredictable. I remember when they rescheduled Coachella from April to October. I'm like, October? That's crazy. But now you're like, well, October's crazy because who knows what's going to go on like that. And for me, at the beginning of March, I went to see Kiss at Staples Center. So I was with 20,000 people. And then like the next week you start to hear about like, all these things and all the NBA players that went in and out of Staples Center, and they all seem to have caught it. And I'm like, so I had like 2 weeks where I'm like, oh, I was at like this huge event, and, knock on wood, everything's fine. But you start to think about like, oh, when there's shows, maybe people are comfortable going to things at the club or theater level. I think it just takes a little time. And I think that people will be comfortable going back at some point. But like you're saying, you can't even predict when you would hold the event. But just what would you think would be something that, like, even if it's a year from now, well, here's how people can be more comfortable about going to like a big arena
Well,
show.
look, I think the thing, it's funny, Bill Gates has been sort of one of the sort of unforeseen spokesman of this thing. He did that TED Talks in 2015 where he was saying, he goes, look, something like this is coming and you better get ready, and we're not prepared. And of course, here it is. And it could be argued that we weren't really prepared for something like this, and the idea that, a vaccine or something, some sort of medicine that you can take to get through it. They're experimenting with medicine, and hopefully they'll find something, ASAP. A vaccine, it seems to be that could be a year, they're saying, before that happens. So, I mean, again, those are the kind of things that get public confidence. It's like, I don't know, you and me, we got our smallpox shots when we were kids. We never thought another thing about it. You know what I mean? And obviously they give flu shots every year. The only time I got a flu shot, I got really sick with the flu, so I actually don't get them.
And I mean, people have that reaction. And look, there's people who, maybe occasionally do get a flu shot, don't have a reaction, but just don't get around to it. Ever since I had kids, I always try to get it every year, sort of early in the season. But yeah, just because there's going to be a shot for it one day doesn't mean everybody's going to get it. And look, I think it's just going to be, look, you go around Asia, a lot of times you see people just wearing masks. And I mean, anybody that's been to Beijing under normal circumstances, the air is just so thick there. I was like, oh yeah, I can see why everybody, and I feel like that's probably going to be, that's going to be a little bit more commonplace here for a while.
Yeah. And look, we can look to the, to Asia, to the East, if you will, and kind of see maybe a bit of a prediction of what's coming our way. And I mean, look, I guess if there's any good news about that is it helps us sort of get ahead of it, but again, it's all speculation. Look, they know one thing, that just staying away from each other right now is really the only preventative that we have. And that's, again, the best thing we can do. Well, look, again, hopefully by the time the summer comes around, maybe there's some new changes. There's some developments that have happened. And I think, look, everybody's going to be pretty starved for some sort of social fellowshipping, no man is an island unto himself, I think is the scripture, you know what I mean? So it's, that's, there's a reason for that, but look, we got to do what we got to do, right?
Yeah, so, of course.
And look, so then we do this.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think that if you have to be under some kind of quarantine or lockdown, there's few places that I've been to where I feel like you'd be better suited for it than Scottsdale, because it's just this beautiful wide open spaces. Pretty nice. That little like downtown Scottsdale, I always love, there's that little ice cream shop that I think it's called the Sugar Bowl.
Sugar Bowl, yeah, that's it.
Because it's like, and I always found it so fun to go around the Phoenix area, because when they have spring training for baseball, it's also close together. Anybody that ever went to Florida for it, it's like, it's like 2.5 hours to another stadium. And so I always love that area, because even though it's a metropolitan area, it's that combination, that perfect combination of, you were talking about, you looked out the window and there's not a cloud in the sky, just wide open spaces. And that seems so comforting right now. So
it really is, and at least to feel like you could be out in the backyard and there's not a lot of people around, so you can, get some UV rays, or saying that's supposed to help, so just even to try to get a little bit of exercise, that's a big thing. I mean, my family, we're big into exercise. I have been, since I got sobered up years back, you know what I mean? So just to be able to move your body a little bit too, it just helps, to just kind of feel like, you're, I don't know, productively, engaging your whole senses into stuff. And it's hard, I mean, I've been sitting in this room now for a month between, I've done so many webcasts and broadcasts in this very, I feel like maybe I should turn the computer to get a different look at the door maybe or something, but it's, as I start changing the records out, it's, but it's like, it's kind of this age of a new invention, so it's necessity is the mother of invention, but but
well,
I appreciate you checking in with me, Christian.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your support on our event tomorrow.
Perfect way to mention one last time that, you're going to be inside. Why not tune in for a few hours tomorrow, April 11th, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 Pacific. Oh, Say Can You Stream? That's part of the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation, the Ellefson Youth Music Foundation.com. That's where you can find it, and all the other places we mentioned earlier. So I think it's a great thing to be doing, and I love to see all the names of how many people were happy to help out. So it seems like it'll be a great event, and hopefully it's the first of many events that you're able to do, and not out of necessity because we're all locked up, but because you're able to kind of continue with the cause. So
thank you so much.
Best of luck with it. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, David Ellefson. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.